السادة الحضور، ستبدأ الفعالية بعد 5 دقائق.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are going to start within 5 minutes from now. Please kindly be seated.
السادة الحضور، يرجى التفضل بالجلوس استعدادا لبدء الفعالية. شكرا لتفهمكم. السادة الحضور، ستبدأ الفعالية بعد دقيقة. يرجى التفضل بالجلوس ووضع الهاتف الجوال على وضعية الصامت. شكرا لتفهمكم.
Ladies and gentlemen, within a minute, we're going to be starting right now. Please keep your smartphones in the silent mode. Thank you.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم أيها
In the name of Allah's most compassionate, God's peace and mercy be upon everyone, ladies and gentlemen. God's peace and mercy be upon all of you. Of course, I welcome you to the second day of the first Saudi Statistics Forum. Welcoming you and welcoming your participation with all of us, wishing you a pretty wonderful and useful time, God willing. We start today the first session about innovation and development and statistics methods, and this is the third session of the first Saudi Statistics Forum. And I'm very happy to welcome Their Excellencies, the guests of this important session, Mr. Ultimately, the Director of Estonia Statistics Authority, Mr. Markus Sofala, General Director of Statistics of Finland, Dr. Dia Awad Kavim, the head of the Statistics Authority and Geographical Data Center, Iraq, Dr. Mohammed Al-Ataibi, the General Supervisor, the Acting General Supervisor for the Research, Development, Innovation, Dr. Al Herban, the Vice CEO for Data and Electronic Government in the Kingdom of Bahrain. And this session is going to be moderated by Dr. Sarah Al-Zaid. I invite all of you as to participate in this important session, wishing you blessed time for all. In the name of Allah, most compassionate, distinguished guests, welcome you to the second day of the first Saudi Statistics Forum, which is organized by the General Authority for Statistics, Dr. Sarah Al-Zaid, General Director of the Statistics Development Center in the General Authority for Statistics. It gives me much pleasure to moderate the third session titled Innovation in Development and Statistics Methods. Let me welcome our guests, Mr. Armasley, General Director of Statistics in Estonia, Mr. Markus Sofala, General Director of Statistics in Finland, and Dr. Dia Kavim, the head of the Authority of Statistics and Geographical Data in Iraq. I'm Dr. Mohammed Al-Ataibi, the acting Director of Research and Development in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, Ms. Al Herban, the Vice CEO of the General Authority for Data and Government in the Kingdom of Bahrain. In this important session today, we're going to talk about the role of emerging technology and modern technology in developing methods of producing statistics and data and collecting data through across different sectors, concentrating on the innovative applications such as the images, satellites images, in addition to smartphones applications, taking the concentration and the importance of such kind of sources being the source of big data, which will enhance decision-making process and enhancing policies. And we might start this important session with the first question, Ms. Arme, with Mr. Arme. With over-increasing importance of the digital sectors and environments, innovation has become a matter of necessity in statistics field. In your opinion, what are the innovative statistics products that are required by customers and clients, and what national authorities can provide as regards statistics services? شكرا يا سارة، شكرا جزيلا الضيوف الأعزاء. شكرا جزيلا على دعوتي هنا. هذه ومن المثير أن أتي إلى هذه البلد وإلى الهيئة وأن نتكلم عن تلك الابتكارات، ولذلك فشرفني أن أكون متواجدا معكم وأن تسنح لي تلك الفرصة لمناقشة كافة تلك الموضوعات. ولذلك سوف أعود مرة ثانية إلى السؤال ما نوع المنتجات
by our clients, or what can we do? I would like to point out a few. People often think that innovation must be something completely new, something very, very different. It could be, but it doesn't have to be. And I think the lowest hanging fruits when it comes to a new technology is that we can actually improve a lot of our current product portfolio. We can make it better quality, we can make our product faster, and this is very, very important. We were talking yesterday about the standards and being able to be comparable and so forth. So I think this new technology at first hand gives us an opportunity to achieve a lot in this regard. Another thing, what the technological advancement allows us, and this is also another topic which I hope we will cover a little bit later, is that new products and innovation must come in cooperation with the client, with our product user. It is quite often that we go into our laboratories, we go into universities, we go behind our desks and start thinking out new things. But we don't realize, is it useful for anybody as well? So we need to change our mindset a bit and open up ourselves and get engaged into a joint creation of those new products. And yes, we know a lot about statistical methods. We know about the technology that can be used to apply those methods, but we quite often fail to understand what users want and how they want to apply our products. So, joint design. And last but not least, we have been, I think, quite often thinking that our product is usually a table, graph, some kind of visualization, a sort of processed statistical product. But these days, the data has become a product itself. But data not in a raw format, but in a format of cleaned, prepared, analysis ready. A lot of people talk about this data as new oil or something like that. It's only valuable when it has been processed. In a raw format, it's a big mess. And there's like little value in this. The new technology helps us to do that. But it's not only technology, it's also about people and our skills.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Orme.
We might move to Dr. Mohammed Al-Atibi right now, of course, within the framework of the transformation towards knowledge-based economy within the Vision 2030 of the Kenyan Survey. How can we move from collecting data to use such kind of data for innovative vision that will enhance the national development and the decision-making process? Thank you very much for such important question. سوف أتحول للغة الإنجليزية الآن. شكرا على السؤال.
As you just said, Dr. Sarah, we are in Saudi Arabia, we are on the journey of actually making innovation work to solve the problem of the future of Saudi Arabia. And by that, we are actually having enough resources and enough also data that we can work around, so we make sure that we solve it for the future of this country and also look for the opportunity. In the past, there are many cases where the academic exercise and research and development, and that doesn't lead many time to innovation, where actually the academic would invent their own problem and solve it through simulation and so on. However, today Saudi Arabia is focusing on 4 clear priorities for innovation: health, sustainability, which is food and water, energy, and economies of the future. All of them, we have enough challenges and future opportunity that we have enough data about, that we need the minds of Saudi Arabia to go after, to utilize this data. So we need every researcher. We have about 40,000 scientists and researchers here in the kingdom in collaboration with more than 100,000 researchers and scientists across the globe that are working together to solve the future problem of Saudi Arabia. We have a water problem, we have health problem, cancer surge, and so on. All of that. We need to utilize this data. So essentially, all of these scientists and researchers are becoming, and they have to be data analysts, where they actually look at the problem, analyze the problem, and not speculate about the solution, but actually find the solution through data. So this is very kind of essential movement that we need to go hand in hand. Innovation cannot work without proper access to data that will tell us what the problem, so we can diagnose the problem of today and then we can come up with the solution of tomorrow that would solve the problem and explore opportunity for this nation. Thank you.
يعطيك العافية.
May Allah bless you, Doctor, for such important answer. I might actually move the question to Mr. Marcus. Take into consideration how can we utilize data that is collected by other entities, and how can we encourage them, for example, so as to collect useful data, which is very good for the statistics process.
That I'm also able to participate this great panel here. In a data world, we are dealing with a very interesting commodity, information, data. The important aspect of the data is that it doesn't wear. It comes better the more you use it. So basic message which the statistical institution to deliver to those government agencies and private sector actors who are holding data for their activities is to remind them that there will be a secondary use for the same data. You are using it for your everyday businesses. The secondary use of the data is the same raw material can be used a second time to produce statistics, to provide data for research, to provide the data for policy planning. And in a country like Finland, like many other countries in Northern Europe, we are very much basing our statistical production on register information, public administrative records. We have access to those records, but of course those records are not they are not made for our purposes. There is some other reason why the data is collected: tax purposes, perhaps car registration, education planning, many other reasons. And it means for the statistical authority that you have constantly, day after day, to communicate that your data is valuable as such, but it could be even more valuable if you're taking into account need of statistical production. So it basically means that kind of lobbying and convincing other actors, it will become the major part of your way to get data. So I very much recommend you to go to lobbying business.
Thank you.
And now move with our question to Mr. Al-Harban. And when we use emerging technology, modern technology, how, remote censoring through the satellite images, improving the agriculture products, and what are the challenges in this domain?
الموجودين ونبارك للمملكة العربية السعودية ودكتور فهد على تنظيم هذا المنتدى ونتمنى لهم كل النجاح في أعمالهم حتى القادمة.
There's important questions, and then wishing you all the best, wishing everybody the best. At the same time, taking into consideration the great efforts based on the memorandum of understanding that we signed with Your Excellency. We mentioned before yesterday there was a very important topic mentioned, which is related to the localization or for example, localization of the international practices with the local requirements. This is very important for the statistics authorities, as not as international requirement, but this depends on the national process and national system of statistics. The Kingdom of Bahrain, the entity which is responsible for statistics, is the General Authority for Electronic Government, which includes besides statistics the geographical data systems and information system, the governance of technologies in the government, digitalization of the government services, in addition to the population registry. And so having geographical data systems as well as one of the responsibilities of the electronic government enabled our authority, the Authority of Statistics, so as to to do things that are related to the satellite images and remote studying. And these steps have been adopted through using or utilizing modern technology so as to have the institutionalized structure in the Kingdom of Bahrain that enabled us to do all of these kind of things using technologies in agricultural fields. It's a necessity. And the Kingdom of Bahrain adopted so many products in the field of agriculture, which was based on implementation of agricultural statistics in 2010, depending on remote sensing related technology. And in this project, we came to study the data which are related to the green areas, in addition to the validity of data as well. There has been another project in 2020 which is related to the properties of plants, in addition to the importance of chlorophyll in plants and plants that are facing problems. And we have the Plants Atlas project in 2023 that we came to depend on modern and highly advanced technologies using remote sensing in addition to the satellite images. As a matter of fact, I believe that the most important thing is to seek integration between the geographical information system in addition to using the satellite images. The latest efforts of Bahrain in this regard, was the launch of the satellite in March 2025 of the satellite, which was developed in the Kingdom of Bahrain, was constructed adopting modern technologies depending on artificial intelligence, and of course monitors the capacities of the earth that enhances the development in addition to statistics with high level of accuracy. May Allah bless you, Mr. Ann. Thank you very much. We move to Dr. Dia once again. Completing our talk about innovation to implementing the thing, counting the population, and because you are responsible for counting the population, people of Iraq as well, how development and innovation came to be used and utilized in all the phases of the population census. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for being here. God's peace and mercy be upon all of you. Good morning. And at the beginning, I'd like to extend my appreciation and gratitude to His Excellency Dr. Fahd Al-Dosri, the President of the General Authority for Statistics in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, for inviting your honorable benefit, for honorably inviting us to attend this important forum. I'd like to extend my appreciation at the same time to our brothers and colleagues and the lecturers, speakers who are attending this important forum where we are exchanging the thoughts, ideas, and the best practices in the field of statistics. As you know all, that and the recommendations of the United Nations in 2020 so as to use geographical information and data as well, and to cope with the latest technologies and the census. And we came to finish and to complete census in Iraq last year, and we played an important role with taking the best practice from the General Authority for Statistics from the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and so as to use the same methodologies that used here in the census. And it was not an easy job that time, so as to implement the electronic census after a long time of years because of the hard conditions that Iraq passed by after the year 2003. We looked at the census as a political issue and not a development issue. And the General Authority for Statistics in Iraq did its best so as to deal with this issue without any system problems. And we strongly believe that since the beginning that the most important thing is to use information technology as to finish this important process. Well, we had 6 months only just to finish this this activity, the census, by the use of the information technology. technology, we came to shorten the period of time and overcoming this challenge, the big challenge, and we dealt with this issue with a high level of professionalism, and we send messages of satisfaction regarding using the scientific methodologies, and we since the beginning, since the first early start and preparation by the use of all technological information technology and electronic applications, and through these applications and these scientific technologies, we came to implement the preparation phases in a very short period of time, so as to move to the experimental, and then with the use of the information technology, we came to shorten the period of time of this important process, implementing the census, so as for preparing the census in a very short period of time. And after receiving modern satellite images, in addition to using geographical information systems, we came to have field-related work, or start-related work, so as to count all the houses and all the buildings as well. Building geographical and geospatial database, geospatial base helped us a lot, enabled us so as to implement this process conveniently. We divided the task force, tasks, and we we identified the number of counters and the specialists as well who can, and devices used that can be used for this important process. Well, so through the geographical information technology, we came to divide more than 112,000 area for the population census, and in addition to 130 specialists, and you can imagine the big work in the short period of time through the rehabilitation and training those big numbers, as well as divide the areas of work and to the counters and the specialists as well. So the best thing was to use this kind of information technology is to supervise and to control and to manage the work of those teams, and in the presence of all the political leaders and government leaders, and even the cultural elite class and the media agencies as well. All of them, they were looking at how information was extracted and how information was registered, and there was geospatial and time print as well, and there was followed up with the work of the specialists as well. And we sent great messages of satisfaction that was based in high level of accuracy and strength as well, that added a great confidence and trust as well, enabling the crowds and the people as well such to work with high level professionality and transparency, especially after coming up with recommendations and outcomes in a very short period of time. That was the most important advantage through using technological advancement and the process that we did for our populations. Dr. Dia, based on your efforts and with the coordinated efforts of all entities in Iraq, they harnessed all the different statistics methods in collecting data and utilize them in a way that will meet the expectations and the basic requirements. We come back to Emet when completing our talk about innovation. So in your opinion, what leads innovation in statistics? Is it, for example, for supply from the producing authorities, or the demand of the users and beneficiaries? How can to achieve a balance between demand and supply?
It seems that Arabic language is much more efficient than English one. So it was quite a tale from my partner's explanation, which was very interesting about the Iraq census and how this technology really helped to build the credibility and trust in people. But coming back to the question regarding what drives innovation, is it the supply, meaning that what we can do, or the demand? In my first intervention, I already mentioned that one of the big challenges, I think, for statistical offices these days is to really start listening to our stakeholders. Some may even call them clients, because it is not very uncommon anymore that although we are producing this public good, which is official statistics and which is funded by public money, we quite often also issue invoices for our sort of not standard products, not some specific data products that we produce. So this client term sometimes is quite proper to use. But my point in this regard is that, yes, again, we as an experts, we know a lot about our business. We know how to do statistics. We know data as well. Markus mentioned here that when we use registers or somebody else's data, this data usually is collected for some sort of X purpose, but it's not statistical purpose. It is somebody else's purpose. So how we can make more use out of that? That means that we need to know that data. And this knowledge is not only that we know how to collect taxes, but we need to know how this tax data is applicable in some other context. Production of statistics for, I don't know, poverty calculations or whatever, maybe very unusual context. And this kind of knowledge is in our houses, hopefully. Hopefully. It is a challenge, I think, also, but in many cases we have that knowledge. We also know how to put data together, how do computations, how to use the modern technology to make processing faster. So we have obligation to share that knowledge. But we cannot, I think we cannot push our understanding to the users. I think yesterday it was very sort of eye-opening when the Ministry of, I think, Resources in the first session, sorry if I got it correctly, I think he very clearly expressed the need, what the user is expecting from the statistical office. And this is very good. Sometimes I think our clients are also in sort of confusion what they want and where the data plays a role in this process and where the statistics can help. I think in this case it was very clear. Now, of course, the threat here is that somehow we still need to take care about the equal access to this information, and we have this responsibility for the society to use our knowledge and skills and resources to describe the social phenomena. So if we only go where the client leads us, I think we may go away from that path too far. But this is the challenge, I think, for today's leaders of statistical offices, to balance that out, to get this user input, put it in action, design new products, improve the processes, and not abandon our core mission, which is to provide a trustworthy and comparable statistics to society. So, in short, I think we need to look at this supply and demand in some kind of balancing act, which is not very easy, but we cannot avoid that.
Thank you, Ormet. You have a comment, Mr. Markus?
Yes. One way to solve the problem that statistical offices, and especially experts of the statistical offices, has the best knowledge on data, but also on technologies and methods. But at the same time, only clients finally know how to use the outcomes. It means that we have to somehow organize dialogue between data holders, statistical experts, data experts, and final users of the data. And it's not only one single dialogue. You need series of dialogues, because the very useful concept here is the information value chain. That information is first collected, then put together, then cleaned, then analyzed, and finally, after these phases, someone starts to use it in research or policy making. So in fact, in all steps of this information value chain, you need a dialogue. So actually the production of statistics became actually a dialogue, a social dialogue between different actors. What we expect people who are providing services for us and which kind of services are expected from us. Statistics Finland is very much considering itself as a B2B actor, business-to-business actor. We don't have very much direct clients. We are serving academic research, we are serving different kind of government entities, we are serving government entities called data rooms, the kind of activities where our microdata is used for the policy planning. So from my point of view, this is a business of dialogue and this is a business of serving other actors. Thank you.
Well said.
Of course, I strongly believe with our colleagues, and according to what we do at the center, I'd like to add some other points to their excellencies' points as well. When you talk about the emerging technologies, the new technologies, and the used methodologies, they are currently used and available as well. So what is the essence of the topic is how to manage and how to plan the human resources and financial, in addition to technological resources, so as to fulfill the over-increasing demand. Yes, there is an over-increasing demand. It is diverse, but how can we manage the human resources, technological resources, in addition to the financial ones, so as to serve our needs? So this is the most important essence that statistics is all about. So this is the essence of our question to Mr. Mohammed, Dr. Mohammed. When, for example, from being descriptive to predictive, so what are the skills in addition to the new emerging intellectual trends, as also as to develop the next generation of experts and specialists in statistics and data?
This is how the real life look like based on this data that we collected. I think what comes into the picture now is the why and when, and also what's next. How can we extrapolate this data so we can actually predict the future? And then we work and innovate, whether it's an opportunity we go after or a problem that we need to kind of address. In general, I mean, here in Saudi Arabia, under the leadership of the General Authority for Statistics, we are trying to have this kind of open data national portal where actually data can be accessed for those who can make something out of it. If we think of data as kind of, especially for this country, as the new oil, we think the mines of Saudi Arabia, the scientists, they are actually the new refinery that would process data and make really huge value out of it. This is how can we leverage the invaluable mines of data that we have. We need to have this strong collaboration between the different entities, between the different research centers, universities. That's what we're trying to work to have this, what we call open innovation, or sometimes it's even called open data. It's almost synonym. It's almost the same thing. We're talking about how can we, with protecting the privacy of this data, for example, if it's a health problem, if it's, water scarcity problem, whatever it is, if it's related to national sovereignty, but we make sure it's available for researcher, for scientists, to actually can help us not just to understand the what, which we know what happened, but we don't know why. And when we know why, we can work on innovate and bring the solution for this kind of problem. So I think also one of the most important, I would say, means to understand data. So through data, it's the only way that AI can make sense, that AI can actually work. Without the data, we will never. We'll just keep speculating about something, probably have some probability of happening without actually having access to the real life. One important probably element that here that we work on under the leadership of the General Authority of Statistics is the fragmentation of data. There is a lot of data. However, when we correlate this data, it will lead to different understanding of the real life problem. If you bring, consumption of water with some certain health problem, then probably this will figure some problem that we never thought of. So all of that, this kind of, unified national platform for data where with the protection of privacy, being anonymous and kind of masks, so we protect the privacy, we protect the national sovereignty, but we actually utilize it in the best way possible. This is what this nation actually ambition to do, and we hope we will reach that kind of level of maturity where the accessibility of data for researchers, for scientists that can actually make a value out of it will be kind of seamless, available, whether it's research and scientists here in Saudi Arabia or across the globe, to help, help the humanity to advance and solve existing and future problems.
Oh, thanks very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Mohammed. Our question, I'm going to give it to Mr. Marcus, is using the statistics advanced methodologies. What is the impact of such kind of methodologies for the decision-maker process in different types of environments?
One service which we provide is that we provide access to our, I would say that to our data lake to outsiders. We think that it's a relatively radical idea that due to the fact that also other institutions may use our data, it actually means that statistical institutions don't have anymore a monopoly deciding which kind of information on society and economy is available. For that purposes, we have built a system which helps us to control that outsiders, when using our household or private or commercial institutions' data, that they are not able to use the data for wrongful purposes. The data is pseudonymized, and we are able to control that any user is copying the data, and also we are controlling the output what the outside users are having. But this service is very much valued, and for us it's a fee-based services, and the volume of our services has been increasing by a rate of 10–20% per year. And the only bottleneck seems to be that are there enough experts in handling the private this microdata, because these data sets can be extremely large. Like we are receiving all paid salaries and wages and benefits on the same day when the transaction was made. We are also receiving information on school attendance. If the children went to school yesterday, we know it today. We are also having information on all electricity consumption of each household in 15-minute intervals. So this richness of data allows researchers to ask very interesting questions. But at the same time, if we fail in providing the data security, of course, it would be really it would be really harmful, not only for our reputation, but also reputation of the whole government. And so the combination of availability of data, but also the data security is something which we must really concentrate on. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Mr. Marcus, for such wonderful and amazing answer. Ms. Dua, if you're talking about the quality of data based on the fact that within your work, I mean, as regards to integration and integration of the geographical information with the Statistics Authority, for instance, within the digital governance, how can, for example, discover the forged and fraudulent data and the wrong data as well in the the government registrations. Within the ever-increasing advancement of technology, and the government competes through providing electronic services and digital services. That's the reason why there has been a bad need for digital solutions and information identity. Identity-based related identity that will keep and preserve the information and data of the person as well. This year, we successfully collaborated with ION company so as to develop the digital K, which depends first of all on analyzing statistically the two components, statistical analysis for the services, for the biometric properties in addition to the behavioral properties. What happened with the digital new systems? And there has been a repeated registration of the bio data, of the same bio data. There has been, for example, fraudulent behaviors in addition to forging videos and images, like at the same time the reuse of data, of original data, has been used by other entities. These problems, we came to discuss them along with the government on the table. We came to discuss such kind of issues, and with Beyond company, for example, asked them to provide digital solutions through analyzing the biometric properties and behavioral properties. And the time used, for example, to provide the service, and at the same time we came to discuss how to develop such kind of service as well, analyzing biometric properties by using tools such as the face matching score, in addition to seek for similarities which are not known and identified by the users, and the quality of pictures. And in the people registration, for example, to issue the identity card, we have the images of the persons. We depended on the direct biometric photography of the face as well, and so as to measure the quality of the photos, and for instance, to discover any kind of forgery. And in our methodology of the statistical analysis of the digital behavior, we came to study the time used, for example, through providing the service, the numbers of the failure-based attempts during the registration process, in addition to movement and the angle of taking the photo. We analyze all of these kind of old properties. They have been developed, and they developed the digital K in the Kingdom of Bahrain, and more than there are many positive impacts and repercussions regarding providing such kind of services, which is enhancing trust and confidence as regards to the provided services of the government, increase its confidentiality, and at the same time protecting the national resources so as not to be manipulated or to be violated by others, and at the same time supporting the sustainable digital transformations using such kind of systems which are fully based on transparency and advancement as well. Blessed efforts. Thank you very much. We move to Dr. Dia, completing our talk about elaborating on your experience in the census and using the statistical methodologies, and which are very developed as well. When you use new innovative methodologies, for example, we have challenges. My question to you: what are the most remarkable challenges that truly affected negatively your work, and how to deal with such kind of challenges, so as to ensure the governance of data and developing the statistical field and process will in compliance with international practices? Thank you very much for this important question. As a matter of fact, we have numerous challenges, and there are various challenges. As we said before about the statistics authority in Iraq, some statistical authorities face numerous challenges will so as to cope with the technological advancements or to use the newly technological advancement in statistics. One of the most remarkable challenges is the resistance of change, the resistance of change. Any traditional methodologies or that took years and years just to give results. When you think about changing such kind of traditional methodologies, taking into considerations the electronic and technological advancement, we face numerous cases of resistance and refusal as well. And even when we think about benefiting from the private sector and information technology sector and communication sector, so we face numerous difficulties as regards the regulations and resistance and hesitation of others who are of other sectors as well. In addition to all of this, the electronic and digital transformation and the use of the modern technology requires enough skills, and this is what we have to see in the statistics authorities. At the same time, we have to provide numerous training sessions and training courses as well. And through once again, the census was a great opportunity for all of us, so as to invest all the technological advancement in addition to the modern trends, so as to enhance our skills, our capacities, and to build our capacity to use the information technology in the census process and field. And certainly, all the developed statistical methodologies need specific requirements, which do not come fast or all of a sudden, but need big time and resources such as communication network, in addition to the infrastructure, the internet services, the speed of the internet, and providing the electronic services that are based on the internet connection. And at the same time, we see this is one of the remarkable challenges about the lack of cooperation from the other government entities, the data producing entities. Sometimes we face a problem as regards the exchange of the data, in addition to being allowed using the proper regulations, in addition to many other challenges. Statistics authorities, they suffer the lack of the importance of statistics and the importance of statistics so as to be functioned using the properly produced data in the planning process. That's why we invite all the decision makers and the policy makers so as to utilize such data and such outcomes in every decision making process and making any policy for the future. And we have numerous challenges, and as we said before, we mentioned all of these kind of challenges, in addition to many other challenges as well. As you said before, and you mentioned, in any new novelty or any new technology, there must be challenges. And with the speed of the technological advancement that we are witnessing all around the world, we need to go pace with training, building capacities, and training and developing the skills of the human resources to use them in a much better way. For example, we come to the conclusion of our session as well. A question for all panelists is, in one sentence, what is the future trend, the most important future trend that has to be adopted by statistics authorities and government entities?
I think it's an ability and capability to manage stakeholder relations and lead on or actively participate in data governance of the national data system. So additional sentence is that we cannot be only bordered with our own institutions. I think our responsibility for good statistics and data governance goes beyond our institutions. This is our benefit, but it is also benefit for whole society.
Thank you. Mr. Marcus?
Thank you. I would say that the most important process going on is the increased competition on the data field, and it takes place in many forms. I know that after traveling here in Saudi Arabia, I will receive many emails asking my opinion. How was the service here in a hotel? How it was in the airport? How I rank Turkish airline services? But so people are asked so many questions every day. So. Actually, all statistical authorities face the same problem, that we are not the only ones asking people. So this shows up as a declining response rate, because I don't want to answer all questions I might ask. So I understand why our citizens are not that eager to respond to our questions. So we need to generate different sources of information, and this is one very good reason to try to convince other government agencies that please give us access to your data, and please take into account also our needs on the information content on your data, because this is the only way to go forward in a world where there are a lot of digital interactions going on. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Marcus. Dr. ضياء.
One of the most important, remarkable point as regards to future trends is to work hard to automate all these statistics systems and to achieve automation not only for the government entities, but we need to have a one-track, official track for all the entities as well, even for the data-producing entities as well, producers. We have long journey, but this journey is supposed to be reached by all of us, and even if this takes a long time, but by the end of the day, we need to automate all the statistics methodologies and systems, and we are supposed to benefit and utilize and benefit from the private sectors, the United Nations organizations, and the training centers and training organizations, and to need to have a fricative contact and communication with the best practices that come from the Arab or international statistics organizations. Dr. Mohammed.
Highness, the Crown Prince, probably could be relevant here, which is, as Rohan said, the future of Saudi Arabia is not dependent on oil, but on the minds of our people and their ability to unleash their potentials. I think that when we treat data as a national asset, a data-driven innovation is our way and our path toward a knowledge-driven economy, which will take this nation forward.
شكرا جزيلا. تفضل يا استاذ دعاء.
يعطيك العافية دكتورة. يمكن
Doctor, thank you very much as well. I can actually summarize the whole discussion, the whole topic in some words, a few words, is to keep our ability and our capacity and enable our national resources and human resources in the statistics field, and to cope with the world trends in technology, and which will constitute our essential basis, and to adopt continuously the developed technologies and over-increasing technologies as well, and so as to stabilize ourselves, and the one who does not have, the country that does not have statistics will never be able to be innovative, and the one who is not going to be innovative is going to be backwarded. I mean, going to be delayed. With the conclusion of this important session as well, we'd like to emphasize on the importance of innovation, which is not a choice, but has become a necessity to cope with the future trends as well. We thank our panelists for such a rich discussion. Thanks very much, our distinguished guests as well. I'd like to extend our appreciation to the General Authority for Statistics for organizing such an important conference. So let's get together in the future once back again.
أيها السيدات والسادة، أيها الحضور الكريم، شكرا لكم
Thanks, guests, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks very much for participating and listening to the third session. And now we move to the fourth session. And on the second day of the first Saudi Statistics Forum, which entitled "The Role of the Private Sector in Supporting and Producing Statistics Data." And on your behalf, would like to welcome the participants in this important session. His Royal Highness Prince Walid bin Nasser Al Saud. The founder and the CEO of Mukatafa Company, Mr. Xiaoming He, the head of the International Institute for Statistics, Mr. Johannes Jutting, the CEO of Paris 2021, Dr. Ibrahim bin Mufarrah Al-Manjahi, the president of the Saudi Society for Statistics. And this session is going to be moderated by Dr. Omar Al-Kbaisi. On your behalf as well, I invite the panelists and speakers so as to participate in this important session as well. Wishing you a pleasant time. Thank you very much. God's peace and mercy be upon all of you. Welcome to the second day of the first Saudi Statistics Forum organized by the General Authority for Statistics. Welcome to the fourth session talking about the role of private sector in supporting and producing data as well. I'm the General Director of the Health and Education, the General Authority for Statistics as well. Your Royal Highness Walid bin Nasser Al Nasser, the founder and the CEO of Mukatafa Company. I'd like to welcome Dr. Xiaoming He, the head of the president of the International Institute for Statistics. I'd like to welcome Johannes Jutting, the CEO of Paris 21. And would like to welcome Dr. Ibrahim Al-Manjahi, the president of the Saudi Society for Statistics as well. Welcome to this important forum as well. We hope that you had a pleasant time during a visit to Riyadh. Based on the sessions of this important forum, we came to talk about the role of the private sector, and the role in producing data. And this session depends, is based on the importance of the role of the private sectors, the fact there are so many companies in producing and the statistics as well, which are related to the development scope in general as well, being considered as one of the most important components of the national economy, and that this data has great importance. For example, in your perspective, Your Royal Highness, what about the role of the private sector? Through, for example, operational data and field data and financial data as well. Is there a successful example for such important partnerships? First of all, God's peace and mercy be upon all of you. Thank you very much for this important question. If we have consensus on the main points, or we agree on some points that the role of the private sector is very important, and the private sector needs to reach maturity phase to participate, to share its data with the public sector or with a third party to regulate such kind of data and organize such data. We have one of the most important goals of the Vision 2030, so as to increase the contribution of the private sector from 41 to 65 and from 35 to 65, starting with SMEs and micro enterprise as well. This is the first factor. The second factor, we talk about, for example, the goal of 2030 speed, and which is very important. To take into consideration, we need to change the regulations and so as to develop these sectors, and the investor needs to make his decision in much faster way as well, more than before, so as to achieve his goal. So today, for example, from opening a shop or having a shop to a mega project. We are all in the bad need of data so as to improve the quality of the decision. And today, our problem that we're facing in the private sector, and we did not reach until today the phase of maturity and perfection where we can share our data with other sectors. Now we are achieving to some extent good results and making good results, but the motivation behind this is that based on what we see in the private sector and through our company, that the private sector needs, for example, to reach compliance with the regulators on so many regulations, to come up with new regulations, or so as to push forward towards a certain goal is to provide data. So the private sector started to provide very important data. But to answer a question, and there are huge data that the private sector has operationally, and either in the human resources data, sales data, and in so many related issues that the private sector has great data regarding its different functions. The private sector is characterized by having huge data. However, the gap is which we need to bridge. Is how to take such kind of data from the private sector. We collect them, and then we provide it in a much better form that will help decision makers by the end of the day. So I understand from your perspective and your opinion, from your words, that there are initiatives, for instance, to provide the data by private sectors, and now and still there are many other options and goals to co-pace with the future trends that through which we can measure our goals and the implementation. Dr. He, let me ask you, for example, we heard from His Royal Highness that there are some data started to be adopted, but how can statistics, national offices and authorities utilize such data taken from the private sector, and what are the mechanisms or the platforms that can help us, for example, achieve this in participation with the private sector? Thank you.
Authority for Statistics in Saudi Arabia for organizing this important event and having me at this panel. So we all know that the national statistics offices depend a lot on data from the private sector to improve the accuracy, relevance, and the validation of statistical outputs. So I think the key to success is to build a well-defined and well-designed partnership that benefits both the public and the private sector. So I think our start was data sharing agreement that we should have between the national statistics offices and the private sector. This allows everybody to think ahead and plan early. I think that such an agreement will help data sharing, and early planning can really help both sides to think about not just the availability of data, but what kind of data are of higher value. And such an agreement can also improve compliance with data privacy protection regulations. We all know that different countries, different regions have their own regulations, such as GDPR in the European Union and DPDL in Saudi Arabia, for example. So those regulations need to be reflected in those data sharing agreement, and I think that's really the first step.
Shukran, Dr. He.
Thanks very much, Doctor. So I understand from your words that, for example, you depend on regulations, and through regulations, we can enable the private sector through encouraging the private sector to share the data, through sharing them with some data outcomes or results. Let's take me to ask Dr. Getting how we build the trust and the privacy, confidentiality when we share data with the private sector so as to have statistics better outcomes.
Inviting me to this important event and also for being part of this important panel. Thank you for your question. I think that the topic of trust has come up yesterday as well in our conversation, but it was through the lens of the public having trust in official statistics, which is a key component for the development of National Statistical Office products. If there's no trust, the very basis of the functioning of NSO is undermined. I think the same is with this relationship between the private sector and the public sector. If there is no trust, you will not be able to establish a sustainable long-term relationship. Now, I think we should step back a second and see what are the incentives for this kind of partnership in the first place. What is the incentive? Why is the private sector? The private sector basically wants to sell its data to make money. It's a for-profit entity making money out of that data. And for the national statistical offices, and I think you explained it very nicely, and we have heard it, it's about augmenting the quality, it's closing data gaps, it's about efficiency consideration. So I think the first point to realize is that the incentives are not necessarily aligned. But if you want to build trust, you have to be at least acknowledge of that fact. And that's the first point I wanted to make in terms of, the first point is align incentives. The second is, and I think you already elaborated, is how can we build the trust? It's about establishing institutional relationships between the private sector and the public sector, data sharing arrangements and other forms that define the relationship so you can have an entity that you can rely on. A third point I wanted to say, building trust, is maybe having third-party models. Often, I think we have to be a bit more granular. Who is the private sector specifically? Are we talking about telecom companies? Are we talking about companies that sell or resell augmented data from geospatial satellite imagery? Is it scanner data? So the private sector, it really depends. And sometimes we have intermediaries, data enablers that sit between the private sector and the public sector and the NSO, which can be actually quite helpful. And last but not least, I think for trust, what is important is, and I discussed this with the Director General of the Estonian Statistical Institute just yesterday, is to start with pilots. Start simple. Don't be too ambitious in the beginning. Use the pilots to learn, to build relationship, and then go for a long-term relationship. So maybe those 4 elements, like be clear about the incentives, data sharing arrangements, third-party model, and as well as start with pilots, could be helping to establish the trust needed for a successful long-term relationship.
Shukran, Dr.
Thanks, Doctor. I think based on our situation and for the status quo, if we talk about the pilot, to move to the pilot, I mean, through collecting the data and the validity of data. So this takes me to Dr. Brahim. What about the role played by the private sector to develop innovation in the fields in the big data and analytical analysis? Today, we talked that some of the data that we are sharing with as well. But if the relationship has been developed between the private and public sector, and there has been a big participation as regards sharing the information data to the extent that we have big data. How can we use this big data? Thanks very much, Dr. Amr, for this important question. I would like to extend my appreciation to the General Authority for Statistics for organizing such important forum and achieving this tangible success, and hoping to see more and more conferences that will cover the topic of statistics in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and the world as well.
I will speak in Arabic and give the time to the translator to translate to English. The role of the private sector is very essential. The private sector is always our permanent partner in development and the growth as well. It has vital and dynamic role in supporting innovation in big data and statistical analysis. I'll try to give examples. I mean, the big and the large companies, technological companies, the companies that working in the field of technology, or the companies, the concerned technology companies that work in providing medical and health service, in addition to the companies that are working so hard to invest in platforms, in e-commerce platforms. They produce a big data, in a big amount of data, and very large in one day, in each and single day. So it's to remain in a copy and paste, to keep to stay and to remain in the market. Such countries, they invest in technological tools and modern tools that enable them so as to deal with the data a much faster and with high level of agility as well, such as, for example, the immediate processing of data. Investors, they need, for example, to know immediate processing of data as well, prediction as well, which is based on artificial intelligence, taking the consideration the importance of artificial intelligence today, which has become commonly used. For example, most of the companies, they use such kind of artificial intelligence in a very remarkable way, amazing way, which is a point of attraction for users and investors as well. In addition to, for example, in writing reports, which is the big concern of readers. Those who are interested in following some of the indicators or indices as well. So need taking some data and piece of information so as to improve the performance of these. In addition to the cloud accounting as well, and the ability to expand. We're talking about mega data and big data as well. If we, for example, depend on the big data in a single day, so by the end of the day, we'll have great and exceptional big data as well. Most of the companies right now, they started to use the cloud the cloud accounting, in addition to the other software application that we use in the universities, the software for statistics. In addition, and now most of the people right now use different languages of programming. Now it has become available in the cloud as well, so you can do whatever you want, all what you want to do through for example, the cloud accounting. And if you really look for such software, you can find them anywhere, and then companies facilitated, for example, such programs. If we talk about the private sector, we can summarize this in 3 points. The first of which is its ability to bridge gaps. The private sector, there are many companies like Indeed, for example, that work in the field of in recruitment and advertisements for jobs and recruitment. Most of you know these kind of companies. This company has big data because of its field in recruitment and employment. In addition to many related ads, and it always producing economic indices and indicators as well, more detailed and more accurate as well, and it does such kind of job permanently if it's compared to other entities in the public sector that needs big time, for example, so as to publish such kind of indicators or indices to the specialists or the community. The other thing is the private sector has the capacity to develop the tools and the infrastructure related to data as well. We have Amazon, many companies like Amazon and Google as well. So they use different tools right now that can be available online and deal amazingly with machine learning and AI, artificial intelligence, in addition to e-learning. And we have something called TensorFlow. We have Amazon Sage and Maker and all Search Maker. All of these tools are available right now for all programmers. Before and recently, if you want to make a code for a problem, for example, you need to write big lines and lines of the codes. For now, these tools facilitated the whole process, and it became in reach and available for everybody. On the contrary, it will facilitate the modeling or dealing with a specific problem in a specific environment. If your goal is to collect data or to make advanced analysis of data or whatever is similar. So we have a high level of competition so to provide such kind of tools that are available and everybody can use. And the third point that we can cover and that points out the role of the private sector in innovation and producing an analytical statistics and analysis, and for example, and due to the incentives given to the talented specialists or people, anyone who is very excellent in programming, of course, the private sector will attract him and will give him a very good salary, and this, by the end of the day, will lead to produce new tools based on those talents that will enable us, by the end of the day, to use them in collecting data and in analyzing big data in a very automatic way and very and conveniently as well. Dr. Ibrahim, you mentioned examples on how that the data of the private sector facilitated in developing methodologies and innovating the statistics science of statistics. These are the things that we need, for example, take into consideration. Your Royal Highness, when we talk about the importance of this forum, and you mentioned that you're facing challenges and data, either through obtaining the data or generating data, and in addition to many other related privacy issues, how to ensure and guarantee the quality of such kind of data. Please, could you explain more, elaborate more? First of all, I'd like to comment on some of the points that mentioned by our colleagues in this session. I mean, the relationship with the private sector. We strongly believe that the relationship between private sector and public sector must be established in mutual trust, and it's very important. For example, it's not that easy, but it's not complicated at the same time. But the other thing I want to talk about, I hope and I wish that all the concerned entities, statistics entities, if we want, we appeal to them. If you want the participation of private sector to share with the data, if we change the language from from what we need to what you need. Do you need? That's it. So, for example, and the private sector always, based on our experience in our offices, we always see big gap in priorities between the requirements of the public sector and the priorities of the private sector. The private sector, in such case, as for statistics and for data, needs specific data today or for the present time, but the statistics authorities or offices, they have strategic priorities which are different. So when we ask or request the data from the private sector, so we request data that the private sector does not save economically visible. This is what we can say. And coming back to your question, may Allah bless you. I mean, now the private sector has three challenges in this regard in sharing data. And the first of which is privacy, confidentiality. And the second challenge is the cost of providing data. And the third challenge is that there are no unifying criteria or standards. And I need to explain each one. As for privacy, any company sees that its data is top confidential and it has privacy. And so as to ensure its competitiveness, and there is a privacy, for instance, as not to be leaked to competitors or to be taken by competitors. This is one thing that we understand. In our situation, the Kingdom of Serbia, for the status quo here, there is another dimension we need to take into concentration today. The private sector, and here I mean the private sector, when I mean the private sector, that the private sector is scared and concerned about giving the data to the public sector, and companies will public sector will benefit from such data in a way that will compete strongly with the private sector. So we might see the PIF sees that there is a sector with high level of profits, and they use such kind of data, for example, to enter such sector. So the private sector will be scared or be concerned. So the private sector wants to be sure that the private sector company will not use their data to compete with them. The other thing the private sector is concerned is scared to give data. For instance, if we talk about specific sector and we find that this sector or for instance, empowering women by this sector is excellent, and they are attracting women, such as retail. 54% of the staff or the human resources are women. So the private sector will be concerned about this point, that the data could be used against it, not for on behalf, not for it. So instead of having, for example, incentives, there might be some other things or negative repercussions. If we identify the problems facing the private sector, how to ensure and prove to them that will be helpful to them. So this is through this we can avoid the problem misunderstandings. The other thing is the third point. And the cost of data, especially when we're talking about incentives. When the way or the mechanism of collecting or using or utilizing incorporating the data in specific reports. Yes, it has costs and it needs specific systems and specializations. And the private sector, on the other hand, wishes to participate and but keeps away from it because there will be extra cost. This is one thing. And the other thing, today there is a challenge being faced by the private sector, even the large companies, that they started to regulate such kind of issues in the market because we don't have one standard for the specifications of data, the coding, in addition to many other related issues. I know that you are experts in such topics, but the inconsistency and the standards will result in problems. Even if the data is available, there will be difficulty. And I mentioned something that's really remarkable, and then I get back again to what has been mentioned by our colleagues this morning session. It's not a prerequisite to take the data from the private sector, based on what has been said by the doctor. But we are building a relationship between two sectors, the public and the private sector. And I'm talking about the Saudi case. I'm not talking about the case in the world. But still, until now, companies are in the early steps of the concept of sharing data. So now you are professional. So what I'm concerned about is that when you bring the language, a professional language, talking to entities that need to understand what data is, so we can start with a simple, humble step as well. Even we can request simple data. Only we can start building this culture and the standards and the criteria through which the companies see its return, and this will help us to reach maturity phase through sharing data. I would like, for example, to mention one project that we are witnessing, we're seeing between private and public sector, between the Ministry of Rural Affairs and Housing, and now it has become very easy to share data with the private sector, so as to develop the sales and the cycle of jobs in addition to the margin profits as well. So before, the private sector wouldn't share such kind of data, but we did not. But we asked a certain percentage, and so we came to seek fruitful results as well. So by coming onto agreement with the private sector, so as to issue a quarterly based report about the profits, and we reached another agreement with the Minister of Rural Affairs, the Minister of Housing, and municipalities. So this will give you an indicator in English about the great, participation and cooperation. As for the real estate developing sector, this has a challenge. It doesn't have the information or data about the metric, the metric offer or the housing metric. Portions and shares as well. So one of the most important thing is to have a society, and in this society includes the great developers who came to an agreement among them that anyone issues a construction license has to send it to your office, and then we can collect all of these licenses. And the Minister of Housing told us that we can give you all of this data, and in a way that the quarterly based report will allow to give the license of the residential and commercial building, and the future is great and the desire is mutually shared, but we can start with the need of the sector, not the need of the public sector, but we need to start with humble and simple steps as well. Thank you very much, Your Royal Highness. You mentioned very remarkable points and concerns as well, and undoubtedly the private sector, once sharing its data and getting scared of losing its share in the market, and of course these are the concerns that the statistics office and the authorities must adopt policies so as to mitigate such kind of concerns and the strict regulations. I might refer my question to Dr. Haley, how the statistics offices adopt policies that will deal with the concerns and the fears that might come from the private sector. We hear from His Royal Highness that they are scared that they will lose their competitiveness in the market or share in the market, or they might come up with solutions very primitive and to share data with some companies in the private sector, or without the participation of the public sector, or sharing very simple data with the public sector. How can we come up with this policy that would regulate this issue?
Multiple challenges actually the private sector faces in data sharing. Now, you talked about the government policies and regulations, and those policies and regulations can help, but at the same time can add cost and complexity for data sharing by the private sector. So I'm going to use two keywords for most effective policies and regulations. The first one is friendly. The second one is adaptive. So let me try to talk about three focus strategies for government, in designing friendly and adaptive policies and regulations in this arena. First is to develop and promote standardized format and protocols for data sharing. That also includes a standard for data documentation. So those things can help the private sector to work through data sharing, data collection, and data production. I think that any new policy also needs to be backed up by available technology and platforms for all organizations. That way, the private business and companies know exactly what they need to do without struggling to meet those demands or regulations. The second point is educational programs and awareness campaigns, I think, to inform businesses about the benefits, about the methods of data sharing. I think if people don't know the purpose, the benefit, and also who are going to use the data and the results, right? They don't buy in, and that creates more or lack of incentive for data sharing by the private sector, also by other sectors as well. I think people all want to know why they are doing it and how they can do it right. Now, the third point I want to make is to take advantage of the development in data privacy research. We all know data privacy is a critical concern by everybody. And how to address data privacy issues, especially when sometimes we need to ask the private sector to provide individual level data. I think when you need to provide individual level data, data privacy concerns arise even more substantially. So I'm going to just mention one thing, that there are a lot of research currently going on how we can protect data privacy. For example, the use of synthetic data has gained some popularity and appears to be quite promising at the moment. Synthetic data are actually artificially generated data by, for example, artificial intelligence tools that actually mimic the statistical properties of the real data without disclosing individual level information. So if good synthetic data are available and sufficient for certain purposes by the NSOs and so on, that's a win-win situation. The question, of course, is how to generate good quality synthetic data. And how do you know that the synthetic data you have are sufficient for the purpose that you actually need the data for originally? So research in synthetic data quality is still ongoing, and it's really a multidisciplinary enterprise that requires expertise from many domains, including statistics, economics, computer science, artificial intelligence, and so on. And work is being done at the universities, national labs, government agencies, and also by some international partnerships, such as the Global Partnership on Artificial Intelligence. So I think that government regulation and policies also need to tap into this ongoing research and try to update whatever policies and regulations that you have. So that way, I think we will see tremendous benefits to the public sector as well as the private sector. So to sum up, I will say that friendly and adaptive policies and regulations will be the most effective thing that we should aim for, and we need to do whatever we can to achieve that goal. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Doctor. Undoubtedly, and without any doubt, even of the unifying all the methodologies to collect the data is to focus on the cost of providing data as well. If the statistics office is, for instance, invited to have unified methodology and efforts, well, this actually will mitigate the costs for the private sector in addition to guaranteeing privacy, data privacy. And let me just move to Dr. Jetting. What about the best practices that statistics national offices can adopt effectively and efficiently as well? We heard from His Royal Highness that they want to share the data, but they ask statistics officers so as to listen to their own requests more than asking them for data as well. We heard from Dr. Hill about the best practices that the statistics officers need to adopt, taking the concentration importance of data privacy, but we want the best practices through which we can adopt effectively so as to build such kind of partnerships. And what about what about the most important experience through which we can build a very robust relationship with the private sector?
Thank you again. I think we have a very nice flow of the conversation here. I think we have so far talked a lot about the private sector, the challenges, the incentives to participate. I think we just talked about what the government in general can do. And the importance of maybe the word smart regulation is appropriate. So regulation, yes, but smart. I want to talk a little bit about a topic that has been, we haven't yet talked about, and that's the topic about capacity development. I was very happy for those statisticians here who have been in New York at the Statistical Commission. The so-called Friday seminar the whole day was devoted to capacity development and its importance for achieving our results. Now, from the Paris 21 perspective, I think it's important to unpack what is behind capacity development and to have a sort of framework. Let me just introduce you to one way of looking at things, which I personally like a lot because it's a Paris 21 framework, so I should like it. I think I see three building buckets of capacity, which makes sense intellectually to distinguish. There is the capacity of an individual. Let's say you have a National Statistical Office, there is a person who works for it, and it's the capacity of the head, it's the capacity of the management team, and the capacity of the data scientist. Then there is the capacity of the organization at large, which is defined through the rules and forms of that organization. The budgeting rules, the hiring rules, the firing rules, the quality assurance rules, and whatnot. And the third is the institutional environment of a data ecosystem shaping, like we just discussed, the governance, the data sharing arrangements, the incentives, and whatnot. Now coming back, bringing this all home to our question here about the ability to national statistical offices to engage meaningfully with the private sector, I think we underestimate the challenge for the individuals, specifically for the leadership team, but for the head of the NSO, but also for the leadership team. Let me be very clear, or let me give an example. If you talk to the private sector as an NSO head, what do you need? Do you need to have Python technique, data science technique, or do you need more negotiation skills? Do you need to have sort of the ability to convince in those conversations? And I would argue the second one is super important. But now, as you know, many of the, it's changing slowly, but I can see, I mean, we work with more than 90 countries, so my experiences is a bit more with the Global South than with OECD countries. So I can tell you, many people at the top, they have a lot of demand for these leadership skills and negotiation skills. So I think that's something, if we want to move ahead with functioning public-private relationship, you need to invest in the capacity of your management team dealing with the private sector, because otherwise you will not go very far. And here I can give you a couple of examples. I mean, we have started leadership training in Africa. It was hosted in Rwanda, and we had all the heads of national statistical offices coming over. And it was a week of leadership training for their specific circumstances. I mean, leadership is those kind of things, negotiation skills, whatnot. There is a standard package, but there will be also things specifically relevant for national statistical offices. And that was quite interesting to see, to have that group talking about it. We did the same in Asia and Pacific. So I think my main point here at this stage is I mean, we often talk about very important regulation things and private sector things, but I think, excuse me, the capacity part of the statistical office is very important as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Jatti.
Elaborating on the question, we'll return back again to what has been said by His Royal Highness at the beginning of his talk. We want, for example, to change the question instead of asking what you need, but to ask us what we need, not what you need. So this is this one of the issues that we need to take into consideration, Dr. Jering? Dr. Jering, switching the dialogue between the offices, statistic offices. The question, Dr. Jessing, for example, elaborating on the question on the what His Royal Highness said, instead of asking the private sector to share information, we ask them what they need, what they want. That's it. If we move back to Dr. Ibrahim, Dr. Jitting talked about building capacity, human capacity through training them to provide them with necessary skills in addition to the technological skills and technical skills. What about the role of such kind of skills based on your work of the Saudi Society for Statistics? It's a very beautiful question. When you talk about, we explained before about the innovation that can be provided by the private sector. All of these things that the private sector is working on through supporting technology and providing technology and facilitating technology to be used by the community. What's really important to think about is that these technologies will facilitate the collection of data in much more faster and with high level of accuracy. So of course the traditional sources, still some countries sometimes prefer the traditional sources, but with the participating role of the private sector will facilitate collecting and obtaining this information or the data much more faster than before. And I think data is always open the door for development and in collaboration with the private and public sector through the participation. We concentrate on how to deal with the big data, because as a matter of fact, big data give accurate details, more information, and this will contribute undoubtedly to monitoring and to pointing out the economic activity locally, individually, and even in some innovations could be worldwide or globally, and this will contribute to in the future will contribute to pointing out and demonstrating the indices that we talked about, the economic indices with high level of quality. At the same time, and based on such kind of innovations, we'll have the immediate ability to predict what's going on in the world as well. The world started talking about immediate prediction and forecasting. And until today, for example, everybody wants to be more ambitious through, for example, developing the indices, the economic indices, as the participation in private sector comes as one of the most important priorities. We also develop such kind of tools so as to have predictive capacity and modernizing and developing the indices as well in a weekly basis and daily basis as well. Now all the indices and the figures and numbers that are available right now in our hands within reach are not reported or issued daily, but it takes time so as to conduct studies and then to validate the index, and then we pass it to the community or the specialists or the concerned index as well. But with the development which is being done by the private sector, I think we can get all of these kind of data in a very fast way in updating all such kind of data, coping paste with the global economic indices as well. At the same time, the private sector, through their support to technologies, has the ability to deal with the fluctuations and as we mentioned, we remember what happened in the during the pandemic. There has been a challenge, for example, through teaching, through platforms, and through attending the classrooms. Being virtually connected or communicated. But of course, the private sector sector did its best so as to harness technology to make such a thing in a very easy way and available, to the extent that until today even we're using this kind of far learning platforms dealing with the big data now. We are witnessing great development and advancement, and companies are working so effectively and efficiently in a way that can share this data and can facilitate obtaining this data. But the thing that we want to mention about the private sector, that they want transparency. The private sector is seeking transparency at large, and sometimes government bodies are so sensitive. That's the reason we take the product from the private sector, but we need to utilize it in with high level of cautiousness so as to keep the privacy of data. Thank you very much, Dr. Ibrahim. And I understand from your words that building capacities as well can be developed, and in case of need, and just to fulfill the demands of the private sector. And let's come to Your Royal Highness. If we said we agreed all on the need of innovation, and in addition to the policies that will ensure the privacy of data for the private sector as well, and to ensure its competitiveness, let's ask about the most important components of successful and sustainable partnership between the public and private sector to share data. Let me mention one point here. In our foundation, it's an independent foundation, and our main goal is to manage the relationship between the private sector and public sector. It's my piece of advice is we need to have the value proposition from the public sector or from the statistics offices. How can we commercialize the idea to the private sector in the language of the private sector? How to market? So we have a product and we want to sell this product. How can we actually commercialize such kind of product well to the private sector? Of course, there are certain general common concerns mentioned, and in case of having or facing, if we depend on confidence and trust as the main component, how to actually to convince the private sector as regards to the trust as well, in addition to the costs, how the public sector can help in establishing standards and coming up with the standards of data that will facilitate such matters for the private sector. So we increase that confidence and the trust as well, and then facilitate all the problems. The third point I want to mention to you here is the relationship between both sectors is not only depending on transaction. It's not transactions based, but that we need data and special date or specific date, and these are the dates of the relationship only. So we depend them on certain occasions, but we need to have a real and robust relationship between the two parties. I mean, in two sectors, through permanent meetings and sustainable meetings held. And I don't know whether or not if the private sector is doing its best or it's playing its role on much more than the public sector. But we need the public sector to be closely working together with the private sector. The last thing I want to add to what I said, I might talk about the case in the King of Saudi Arabia. I don't know what's going on in the other countries around the world. Today, there are many startups, many Saudi startups working on taking and extracting data and taking data and analyzing data. In the world, in the rest of the world, we have large companies in this regard. I hope, and I appeal to the General Authority of Statistics, to support and back up this SMEs in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia to become large companies in a way that in the future will be able to have companies providing data that will compete the international companies and multinational companies as well at the same time. In particular, if the local company has the capacity to understand the needs of the local community and the local companies, at the same time in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, the nature of the community, the degree of confidence and trust depends on the company that they dealt with and those who are working in the company as well, and the managers. And so we need need our startups, Saudi startups working in the domain. Today, for the time being, we're working so hard to find to see companies, for example. Now we have a challenge. We want to take the data, but we need to take the data first and then reshape the data, for example, to use them in reports and final reports. But we did not find until today companies that can be benefited from by the private sector, because they are scared about the degree of governance. So there is opportunity for the authority of statistics so as to raise such kind of solutions. Thank you very much, Your Highness. So we need to bridge the gaps as well. We need to bridge the gaps as regards to the communication relationship between the public and the private sector, and how the statistics offices can bridge such kind of gaps as well. How to provide, provide incentives to the companies of private sector. For example, I want to ask a doctor here. And what about the other ethical considerations that might come from producing the big data by the private sector? Hassanan.
They bring a lot of benefits. But at the same time, it also raises more and more ethical concerns that we have to address. So first, when we think about regulations, I mentioned earlier that the government regulations need to balance risk and rewards. But at the same time, I think NSOs and NGOs should be really encouraged to discuss ethical guidelines within the United Nations fundamental principles for official statistics. So in this regard, I would like to mention that the International Statistics Institute, ISI, takes data ethics very seriously. We actually have a very active advisory board on ethics established in 2010, currently chaired by Walter Rademacher in Germany. And the work of the board is based on the ISI Declaration on Professional Ethics. And that declaration is to enable statisticians to use their personal professional judgment that's to be informed by shared values of our profession, rather than by rigid rules. So I strongly encourage the statistics community, the data community, to think about empowerment rather than enforcement in this area. I think empowerment is more effective when it comes to addressing ethical concerns. Of course, government regulations and the policies are still going to play a big role, but if we're going to have more people are willing to participate and adhere to professional values and ethical guidelines, everything will work out better. In terms of empowerment, obviously, the most important aspect of it is actually training and education, which certainly has to be part of the statistics capacity building. And in this area, I like to thank Johannes, for what they are doing through the work of Paris 21, because education, training, capacity building is the key for the world to know more about ethics and follow ethical guidelines better. My second point is accountability, I think, especially when now we have big data. We have to know who is accountable to address those ethical concerns that come from the use of big data. This might involve establishment of oversight committees or maybe ethical review boards, so that we are open about the data that we use, the data source, as well as the methods that we use to collect data, to produce data, and also to do downstream data analysis. This will help public trust a lot more. Now, I also like to mention that artificial intelligence is being talked about everywhere. And AI tools really are very powerful these days, even when it comes to to data analysis. But at the same time, I will say that any data analysis coming out of a black box or seemingly black box is unlikely to earn high level of public trust. So we need to think about, the AI systems, right? It does great things, but at the same time can also amplify risks. So ethical data analysis using AI requires human oversight. And we want to make sure the AI technology or whatever new technology coming our way is used responsibly and used, aligned with our core values. And I will quote Dr. Fahad Al-Dosari that he said yesterday at this panel that we as humans have the responsibilities to do things right. Thank you.
Of course, thank you very much, Doctor. And of course, responsibility, accountability must come first as for the user of data, in addition to the system regulations that will ensure the sharing data. And I would like, for example, to come back to Dr. Jetting, if you allow me to ask you, what about the innovative models to share data between public and private sector that we can actually point out or we can identify in the future?
Thank you very much.
Shukran jazilan.
A difficult one. I mean, I think I would like to step back for a second. And in 2015, I was member of the UN Secretary General's group of the Data Revolution. That's 10 years ago. And at that time, I would say it was the early 2010s. There was a lot of conversations about this topic, public-private partnerships and using private sector data to augment official statistics. Now, that's my personal assessment. I think we have seen a lot of very interesting examples in very different countries, in OECD countries, but also in countries like Philippines, Rwanda, Ghana, Colombia. But the big revolution hasn't happened. I think overall speaking, and I also heard this from colleagues who are sort of heads of national statistical offices, the big revolution of using private sector data for official statistics hasn't yet come. There are a lot of challenges that are standing in the way, and we discussed some of those solutions. So I think one has to be also a little bit honest in terms of what can we expect from this kind of thing. Now, looking into the future is always a little bit difficult. The AI revolution that's happening now, with particular generative AI, I think might change this. And we can see examples that, this augmenting of access and the use, and also at the end of the data value chain impact this relationship between the public and private sector and using that data. For instance, in Mongolia, we have done a project with the statistical offices about counting livestock. It's very, very costly to count the cows in Mongolia, very important, but the census is super expensive. So with satellite imagery, with artificial intelligence, with a data intermediary, you can do quite a lot of things much cheaper. So this will come. But I wondered, because you also were asking a little bit about innovative models. And in the beginning, we framed it under private sector. I just wanted to mention this here at the end. We now so far have talked about business, non-profit, for-profit firms. But I think it might be interesting, and I think that's the future as well, as just an additional source of data coming from citizens. There's a so-called citizen science or citizen-generated data. The official statistical community has a Copenhagen framework for using citizens-generated data. Data produced by citizens could be on environmental concerns, could be on assessing public services, health, education, infrastructure, sewage, whatnot. And that could be also an interesting sort of look, in particular in countries where maybe the private sector and the official statistical office is a bit more difficult for different reasons. So I just wanted to mention this going forward. I think it's important to continue the conversation on the use of the private sector data, but I think also for national statistical offices, looking at very different data sources at the same time and being, and this is depending on each country and the regulation and the preferences of confidentiality and all those things we have discussed might be different, but I think it's important to have that also in mind. Thank you.
This, of course, this is one of the most important things that you talked about, Dr. Chetty. I mean, about the development, research, and innovation, and sustainable innovation as well. Come to the conclusion with Dr. Ibrahim here as regards to developments. We talked about the development process in the statistical offices. What about analyzing data in the private sector to some extent? How, to some extent, it will contribute the indicators and the indices as well. So this is a very important question as well. This is the final question, I guess. That's the final question. As a matter of fact, anything that takes place in the private sector regarding the development of data, either an analysis takes place and occurs in the private sector, the most important objective is to how to deal with such kind of data as well. So the artificial intelligence, in addition to the e-learning, and provides economic models, very amazing, that can adapt and comply with the moment change, and in addition to mitigating risks and mistakes as well, that if anything comes from private sector, so the private sector does its best so as to reduce mistakes, and there are algorithms that are being used, for example, depending on artificial intelligence and e-learning. And before I referred to such as SageMaker and TensorFlow and such kind of algorithms can be has the ability to correct mistakes and, for example, the odd values, and by the end of the day, it will lead to demonstrate the data with high level of confidentiality and credibility, and incorporating the data, structural data. We can bring all data all together in a way that we can have a clear picture about data. So still remains some a problem, or just like an issue, is the issue of some data, for instance, that will be difficult to be obtained. For instance, when you talk about data about the freelance, for instance, that the private sector is supposed to, for example, to focus on the freelance and to employ people so as to complete the indices and the indicators that can deal with indicators that come from the freelance as well. So and we have Uber in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Uber, for the time being, is one of the working companies, and Careem, and in addition to many other companies, I don't remember the names as well. All of these companies, they have a big amount of data, and huge data, and big data that will contribute in a way or another to be used to improve the work of the statistical offices, and to improving the freelance indicators, and to actually point it in a very accurate way. So anything that comes from the private sector is supposed to be completing anything that comes from the public sector. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, all, your participations and your contribution to this important session as well. It was a very important panel discussion where we talked with private sector representatives of international organizations, academic institutions here in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and we are still in the bad need of developing the dialogue, developing partnerships among all the sectors in the statistical data field, in addition to developing data as well. Thanks very much for participating in such a important session. Wishing you have a great time enjoying today's sessions. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks very much for participating in this important, attending this session as well. So we hope you enjoy the break that will last for 45 minutes, and then shortly after we'll return back to the ballroom so as to complete the sessions of the conference. Will 12:15 we are supposed to resume our sessions. Thank you very much and enjoy the break.